All right, so complex fractions, let's start with something like this. If I were to take 1/2 and something like this, what does this mean if I were to give you this problem? I'm dividing, right, because instead of the dot line dot that we're used to, I'm just using this big line, but still it means dividing. So I'm dividing 1/2 divided by 3/2. How do I divide fractions? Flip and multiply. So same thing that we've done previously, just written differently. And then what happens? 2's cancel off as long as it's on top and bottom. And I get 1/3. Wow. Very good. So complex fractions are very similar to this, but in order to divide fractions, you need the top to be 1 fraction and you need the bottom to be 1 fraction. So if it's not, you have to do the adding and subtracting to make it into 1 fraction. See this? This is my division right here. So I'm taking this top divided by this denominator. Now, before I can flip and multiply, I need to make the top into 1 fraction, and I need to make the bottom into 1 fraction. So looking at just the numerator here, how do I get a common denominator? What would be my common denominator between x and y? xy. So I give this one a y and give this one an x, and now they match. But if I multiply the bottom times y, you have to multiply the top. If I multiply the bottom times x, you have to multiply the top. So I know right now my common denominator is xy, but now I need to add the numerator, 2y plus 3x. There's nothing to combine, so it just stays 2y plus 3x. And then I look at the bottom, what's going to be my common denominator here? xy again. So I multiply by y, I multiply by x. So make sure you do it to the tops. I know my denominator is going to be xy. And then I have to add the tops together. So negative 5y plus 7x. So now that the numerator is 1 fraction and the denominator is 1 fraction, I can turn it into multiplication by flipping and multiplying. You have to flip the bottom one. You cannot flip the top one. It's the bottom one that gets flipped. And when you write that out, you should notice something's going to cross off. The xy is very good. There's one on bottom, there's one on top, so they cancel out. So my answer then would be that. You do not need to define what your variables cannot be on these, right? You can just, it doesn't say to define, so that's just your answer, you're done. Next example here, I have 1 plus 2x on top, 2 plus 3 over 2x on bottom. And what I want to show you here is that when you have a number, you can make any number into a fraction by putting it over 1. So I can make this one also over 1. Okay? What's my common denominator between 1 and x? X, because everything has a 1. There's a 1 in front of this x. So the only thing I have to do to get a common denominator is multiply the bottom and top by x. So denominator is x. Add the tops. This is 1x plus 2. So just x plus 2. Okay, same thing here. What's going to be my common denominator between 1 and 2x? 2x. So I multiply the bottom times 2x, the top times 2x. So this becomes 4x if I multiply it together. So 4x plus 3 on top over 2x. Now I have a single fraction on top, 1 fraction on the bottom. Now I can flip and multiply. So I'd have x plus 2 times 2x over, and you should notice something crosses off. What crosses off? Yep, this x with this x crosses off. So what's left on top, 2, and then x plus 2. So we'd write that as a multiplication. And then 4x plus 3 on the bottom. And then I'm done. So again, we need to find some common denominators. We need to make the top into 1, the bottom into 1. Okay, so I have an x and a y, and I have 2 y's here. So how do I make a common denominator? How do I make it fair? What do I give this one? Another y, very good. What do I give this one? An x, very good. So my common denominator is xy squared. My tops that I'm subtracting is going to be y minus x. Same thing for the bottom. I have 2 x's and a y, an x and 2 y's. So to make it fair, what do I give the first one? Another y, very good. And then I give the second one an x. So they both have 2 x's and 2 y's. And then I look at the top, and I'm subtracting again, so y minus x. Now that I have a fraction over a fraction, I can flip and multiply. Remember, you have to flip the bottom. And you should notice, right, some stuff's going to cross off. What's going to cross off? The y minus x's. What else? The y squareds. What else? 1 of the x's. Very good, because x squared is x times x. So 1 of those x's cross off with that x. So it's just x. That's all that's left. And here with a polynomial, again, you can write 2 as 2 over 1, and you can write 1 as 1 over 1, make them into fractions. So when I look at just the top here, what's the common denominator between x plus 4 and 1? X plus 4. So I'm going to multiply this by x plus 4. That means I multiply this times x plus 4. You'd actually have to multiply that and get 2x plus 8. Because then when I add the tops together, see how you have like terms, 2 and 8? So the top becomes 2x plus 10 over my common denominator. Here again, x plus 4 and 1, so x plus 4 is my common denominator. Okay. 1 times x plus 4 is just x plus 4, so I'm going to have an x plus 4 plus 3, so 4 and 3 would be my like terms, so I get x plus 7 over the common denominator. Now that I have a fraction over a fraction, I can flip and multiply. So I'm going to have 2x plus 10 times, and you should notice you can cross something off. The x plus 4 is very good. This, I see I can take a 2 out, so maybe I'd want to try that to say, oh, can I cross anything else off? No, so I'm good. We always want to make sure. So then what's left on top? 2x plus 10 and x plus 7. If you put 2x plus 5 on top, that'd be fine, either one.